It's Monday, January 16th, and this is now on H&N.
An investigation is now underway after a plane crash near Molokai Airport.
Major gains in terms of accountability for airlines when it comes to their customer service. We equally have to make sure that FAA has the systems, the staffing, and the operations that it needs.
Lawmakers are demanding answers following last week's FAA computer glitch and travel meltdown.
Primarily on making sure that we can fund everything that we need to do at Red Hill.
From Red Hill to an impending collision course with the debt limit. It's been an eventful start for the 118th Congress.
We cannot default on our country's debt.
Coming up on This Is Now, Representative Ed Case stops by our studio. And welcome to This Is Now. We begin with the latest on an early morning plane crash in Molokai. The Federal Aviation Administration says that it happened at about 5 a.m. A single-engine Cessna went down roughly 2 miles southwest of the airport in Ho'olehua. This was on the approach. Now, 2 people were on board, both of them pilots. One suffered serious injuries, while the other's injuries are classified as minor. Kamaka Air, a local air cargo company, confirmed the incident involved one of their planes. It is unclear what led to the incident, but the NTSB is investigating and will have a preliminary report in 2 to 3 weeks.
All right, thanks for watching. This is now on this Monday. Let's get to the other big story of today. We're talking about that latest mass disruption to air travel as we take a live look at the Reef runway. You see a plane coming in right there. Let's get the very latest on why lawmakers are demanding more answers from our government. Here's Mark with today's Talker Story.
Well, a chaotic winter has many asking, can I trust my airline itinerary? This is even more relevant on a 3-day weekend. Karen Kafa looks at the status of U.S. air travel and airlines, joins us with more. Karen, thank you so much for joining us. Now, first off, what kinds of questions do lawmakers have about last week's FAA mishap, and do we expect to see further congressional investigations into what happened?
Yeah, Mark, we do. In fact, the top Republican and Democrat on the House Transportation Committee, as well as dozens of other lawmakers, sent a letter to the Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg last week asking a series of questions about what exactly happened with that FAA meltdown last week. They have some questions that are specific to the incident, but they also have some questions about what the FAA did in the aftermath to kind of troubleshoot and make sure these kinds of things don't happen again, and what is on the horizon in terms of upgrading the system that went wrong and other FAA systems as well that help keep travelers in the sky safe every day. That committee, of course, important because Congress holds the purse strings in terms of money that goes to the FAA and the other transportation safety organizations. And so they really want to make sure that the money is being put into a place that is going to be upgrading these systems, maintaining these systems, and also making sure that these things don't happen again. So some tough questions there. They've asked that Buttigieg respond by Friday, January 25th. We do expect that they will hold some hearings on the matter. And in addition to the FAA matter, you've also got on the Senate side the committee that oversees transportation that wants to look into what happened with Southwest over the holiday season. So certainly a topic, because it resonates so much with constituents and consumers, that these committees will likely dive into over the next few months, Mark.
Yeah, Karen, about that, it seems that we've had so many different issues at so many different times. For those still reeling from the Southwest cancellations, what is the next step for them and for the airline?
Well, for those who haven't done so already, Southwest has an area of their website that is dedicated to those passengers who traveled or attempted to travel during that period between December 24th and January 2nd, when thousands, I think it was almost 17,000 flights were canceled by Southwest. You can go there, you can put in your information to apply for a refund if your flight was canceled or significantly delayed. There's also information on the website about how to get reimbursed by Southwest for things like hotels, a rental car if you decided to drive to your destination. But last week, the Department of Transportation called on Southwest because they said they've been getting thousands of complaints about this process. Southwest, for their part, says they've been working through processing thousands of these requests per day. They're working through them as quickly as they can, and they also say they are doing so within the DOT guidelines. But the Department of Transportation wants them to work more effectively and respond more quickly. They've asked that now Southwest respond to the complaints within the next 60 days or so. So if you were a Southwest passenger during that window, you haven't heard anything yet, go to the website, make sure you've checked all the boxes on your requests. And then if you do need to file that complaint with the Department of Transportation, you can do so through their website as well.
Yeah, and taking a macro look at the notion of recourse, whether there's an incident regarding bad weather or the FAA disruption that we saw last week, what do experts recommend as the best protection measures? And we're thinking go for the best information.
Well, it's been a really bumpy ride for the U.S. air industry, for the airlines, and also for the whole sphere. Really, since we came out of the depths of the pandemic, there's been some growing pains as travelers had that pent-up demand and really wanted to get back in the skies. We've seen the crowds back at the airports, and in some cases, staffing was the issue, right? We heard about that during the last holiday season when a number of airline employees had to call out because of COVID infections and other things. And the airlines, they said they learned that lesson. They went into the summer months and they said, okay, we're going to beef up staffing. And then a new issue seems to pop up. There was the weather-related thing. There's these antiquated computer systems that were at the source of both the Southwest meltdown and the FAA's problems last week. So bottom line, passengers need to be their own best advocates. You really need to go in with as much information as possible, according to these travel experts. Yes, most of the time you're going to get from point A to point B just fine. I did that this morning, actually. There was no chaos at the airport for me. But in the event of something like this, you want to be armed with as much information as possible so you can help those customer service agents help you know in the back of your mind if there's another flight to your destination. Also know if there's another airline that has a route that might be able to get to where you need to go. Going in with as much information as possible, experts say, is a really big help. And also they say try to fly early in the morning. If something like that FAA incident from last week happens, there will be a domino effect that might affect the flight that happens 6-7 hours beyond that. Try to get the first flight out. You're least likely to encounter those disruptions, Mark.
And let's all hope for a smooth 2023. Karen Kafa, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your time. Have a good one.
Now to some local tourism news we need to tell you about. Halfway through January, and we're halfway to 1 million arrivals, with traffic up from pre-COVID 2019 by just under 2%. Japanese traffic is still about 42% of normal, and other international arrivals are down about 18%. So this increase we're seeing is still coming from the mainland, mostly from the West Coast. Hey, today on Sunrise, Congressman Ed Case was in the studio to give us an update on all sorts of developments out of D.C. He started with talking with our Grace and Steve about Red Hill.
Good to be home for a little while.
Yeah, and I imagine while you are home, you're hearing from a lot of the families that were affected by the Red Hill crisis.
Absolutely. We're still very much in touch with many of the families. Of course, we're in constant contact with the state government, with the military, as well as the Environmental Protection Agency and other federal agencies that are responsible for cleaning up Red Hill. So it's it's not going to go away. It's going to be an ongoing number one priority for me and the rest of the delegation for some time to come. My own focus has been primarily on making sure that we can fund everything that we need to do at Red Hill. And we just finished our next fiscal year bill in which we got another $1 billion for that.
Yeah.
But it's constant oversight, constant making sure they're on track.
And really quickly, there have been issues still with the defueling process. So a couple of questions. Is it moving fast enough? And how do you put pressure on to make sure this doesn't get messed up?
Well, I think for everybody, I don't think it's moving fast enough, but it needs to move safely. It needs to move deliberately, and we can't make other mistakes as we go through that process. And so I think it is moving at the pace that is necessary to ensure that we get it done as fast as possible, but as safely as possible, as deliberately, and not to cause further risk. Number one, I've got oversight responsibility over the military in the Appropriations Committee and otherwise, and I'm in constant contact with them. I ask the questions that I'm asked by my constituents. We are very much concerned, for example, in the last couple of months about, number one, adequate input from the community. The military responded to that in their task force by providing for much more community input by open town halls, as well as the health consequences. That was and remains a major concern for mine. They established the Red Hill Clinic, which is now open, which I'm going to try to visit this week and make sure that they're doing that right. So it's just a daily, hey, what are you doing? Where are you? What do you need? And answering questions and pursuing anything that seems to be not moving along.
I wanted to ask you about the debt ceiling, because the deadline coming up this week. How important is it to fund things like Social Security and Medicare? And will you be able to raise it when Republicans are reportedly saying they will not vote for it?
Well, the debt ceiling is critical, because what the debt ceiling means is the amount that we can actually borrow as a country to finance our programs. And we do borrow. We borrow on an ongoing basis. I believe we borrow too much. So I'm in the camp of we are borrowing too much. Our finances are fiscally unsustainable over time, and we need to rebalance our revenues and our expenses. Now, I don't believe that we need to rebalance our revenues and expenses by cutting Social Security and Medicare. I believe those are fundamental programs, but we need to be able to fund them over time, and they're in danger of not being funded if we don't make these decisions. But the debt limit itself basically is the mechanism that we use to force these debates, but at the same time, we cannot default on our country's debt. We are the most reliable lender, if you want to put it that way, in the world. People invest in the United States, they invest in our bonds, and if we default, if we do not pay people back, if we cause our finances to be questioned in the world, where we are the world's currency, then that is a world of hurt for us in this country as well as elsewhere in the world. So we can't go there. So I think we're going to have to solve this problem, and this is not new. Republicans and Democrats have bumped up against the debt limit in the past, and we've always, not allowed a default to happen.
Well, on that note, we wish you well, and we appreciate the time this morning.
Thank you very much.
High surf continues to roll in on the North Shore, and over the weekend, the pros were out at Pipeline for the Dahui backdoor shootout. Unfortunately, a couple of surfers suffered some serious injuries. A really scary moment when Kala Grace was knocked unconscious after being pounded by a wave while paddling out. Ocean Safety got to the 24-year-old quickly. He was pulled from the water, where lifeguards then performed CPR and got him breathing again. Grace's father, longtime Waikiki beach boy Willie Grace, shared his experience as he watched his son get rescued.
Had a big scar above his eye and right below. He was kind of purple when they brought him in.
And just minutes before Grace got hurt, another pro surfer was seriously hurt. Makuakai Rothman blew out his knee while trying to come back up to the surface.
As the whitewash was coming back up, my leg was going up while my body was going down. And my foot was almost touching the side of my leg.
Rothman thanked everyone for all the love and support. He also asked for prayers to be sent toward Grace for a speedy recovery. On the West Coast, President Biden has approved a disaster declaration for California as the Golden State prepares for more rainfall. Nichelle Medina has more.
The latest storm system to hit the West keeps dropping snow on Flagstaff, Arizona, even though there's already 1.5 feet on the ground. It's the same situation in California's Sierra Nevada mountains, where several feet have fallen, burying cars and making driving treacherous.
When we were on our way, we were debating turning around because we saw the storm was getting bad.
Heavy rain brought landslides to a highway near Reno, Nevada, shutting it down, and mudslides to Berkeley Hills in the San Francisco Bay Area, prompting evacuations of some homes. A tree crashed into a home and onto a road in the area. President Biden approved a major disaster declaration for California as residents like Steve Summy remained evacuated.
I hope everybody else is safe and just keep hanging in there. It's supposed to lighten up a little bit.
But not just yet. Further south, floodwaters surrounded vehicles in San Diego, and the Ventura River near Los Angeles is still raging. This woman says she had to rescue a friend last week who was nearly swept away.
And then she fell, and then she was like starting to sweep right by me, and I grabbed her arm and pulled her out. Thankfully, it almost took me down.
Forecasts show drier weather for the state starting Tuesday. Nichelle Medina, CBS News.
All right, we are getting some breaking news coming into the H&N Digital Center. Our assignment editor just sent out this news coming from Hawaii County Police, and they are telling us that Makalika Street between Ava and Railroad Avenue in Hilo is closed due to a police investigation. They're saying it will be closed for at least 3 hours, so watch for those detours. We are looking into exactly what's going on here, and our producers will write it up, post it on your H&N digital platforms as soon as we know. Another developing situation as we take a look at the south shore of Oahu. We have a photographer heading out to the Ala Moana area right now to check on those jellyfish. We're hearing they're hitting those beaches on this holiday, which will probably have some excess beach goers out there, which would lead me to believe we might see some more stings. So let's get a check of everything else in the world of weather. Here's Guy Hoggy.
And so we're not going to get any meaningful rainfall anytime soon. We will get, however, the fog and the haze, which also will translate into some beautiful sunset skies. So variable winds for the most of the week, and that means hazy skies with that volcanic haze coming up over the islands. And with the light winds, we'll likely get some afternoon clouds and a few spotty afternoon showers. More widespread rainfall is expected over the weekend. That's because a front expected to drop in from Kauai probably Saturday into Sunday. But we're still not expecting a lot of heavy rain out of that. But that's still a long stretch of some of the best weather on the planet.
Well, new at noon, the International Renewable Energy Agency Conference is taking place in the UAE. I know it doesn't sound like the most exciting event, but there really is some big news coming out of it. Let's turn things over to Becky Anderson with more on that.
We're here at IRENA's General Assembly, surrounded by some of the biggest players in the global energy transition. Now, this is setting the scene for the United Arab Emirates hosting COP28, which will provide a critical status update on our battle to fight climate change.
COP28 will be a milestone moment as the world conducts the first global stocktake to assess progress against the goals of the Paris Agreement. We don't need to wait until the global stocktake to know just how much work there is ahead of us.
These leaders say they are working towards the same goal, limiting the Earth's warming to 1.5 degrees. But despite some progress at last year's COP27 in Egypt, the world is still not on track to meet those goals. John Kerry, let me bring you in at this point. You know, collectively, the NDCs are not on track to hold temperature rise at 1.5. Have we moved past that target at this point? And what policies and measures is the US putting in place to increase your own ambition?
Well, thank you, Becky. Theoretically, yes, we can. But there's nothing in the current activities of countries all around the world, mine included, that indicates that we are prepared to do what we need to do in order to meet the 1.5. Even if we went to zero, even if China went to zero, we don't solve the problem. Every country has to step up, and that's the virtue of the stocktake.
The United Nations chief, Antonio Guterres, addressed the Assembly, emphatically outlining his solution, renewables, which he says are the only safeguard to our future and can ensure energy security. Today, he says, renewables account for about 30% of global electricity. Guterres says this must double to over 60% by 2030 and 90% by 2050. To make a renewable future a reality, it's critical developing nations have the resources and tools to transition. But where will the required investment come from?
No government in the world has enough money to do what we need to do. We're talking about trillions. Who has the trillions? The private sector has the trillions.
The message from this meeting then, renewables, whether wind, solar or hydro, are key to saving the planet. But unless private investment is ramped up and is universally accessible, it is the most vulnerable nations who will continue to suffer the most, no matter their own climate policies.
We are very small economies, but we are trying to actually do what we can to actually help trying to fight climate change. And rightly so, I mean, for the Pacific, climate change is an existential threat to us. And we will do whatever we can to actually keep it 1.5 degrees Celsius.
We know that we are not on track to meet the goals set out in the Paris Agreement. Frankly, in many instances, we are regressing, and that is unlikely to change by COP28, which will be held at the end of the year up the road from here in Dubai. But that doesn't mean the world can't correct its course before 2030. Ahead of this year's COP event, the panel's message is clear. Further private investment in renewables is vital.
Climate change has already started.
But that takes not just a willingness to change, but a real roadmap for action. And that starts right here. Becky Anderson, CNN, Abu Dhabi.
All right, here we go. Well, what a weekend we just had for sports. The NFL playoffs are in full swing. Let's show you some highlights from Super Wild Card Weekend. Among the most dramatic games, Chargers-Jaguars, a showdown that saw Jacksonville come back from 27 down, go on a 31-3 run to end the game, capping off the third largest comeback in playoff history. What a collapse for the Bolts. In the NFC, the wildcard Giants went into Minnesota, took out the 3-seed Vikings. Daniel Jones, impressive performance for New York, 300 yards passing, 80 more on the ground, 2 touchdowns. New York got its first playoff win in 11 years. And in Sunday's nightcap, this is the play right here. Bengals-Ravens, a game that turned in the fourth quarter. Tyler Huntley lost the ball at the goal line on a quarterback sneak. Cincinnati back 98 yards the other way. Cincy wins 24-17. They'll face Buffalo. So far, next week's matchups are Chiefs-Jaguars. Kansas City has the number 1 seed. Bengals-Bills, a rematch of that Monday night game. Keep in mind, that was the Damar Hamlin game, so they will be meeting in the postseason. Giants-Eagles and the 49ers, who look dominant against Seattle, will host the winner of tonight's game. That's right, more playoff football tonight. Dallas Cowboys, Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Tampa. Going to be fun to watch.
Exciting stuff.
Oh, I mean, you got Tom Brady playing in the postseason tonight. The Cowboys are favored, but when you have Tom Terrific on the other side, anything can happen.
Well, anything can happen when you're playing the lotto. Well, not really anything. You lose or you win. And if someone did have a lucky Friday the 13th. Here is Kathy Park with more on that.
The nation's newest billionaire could be from Lebanon, Maine, after the winning Mega Millions ticket was traced back to this small rural town of just over 6,400 residents.
Was it you?
Unfortunately, it was not me.
Do you have any idea who the winner might be?
No, I've got no idea.
But we do know the winning ticket, worth a whopping $1.35 billion, was sold at Hometown Gas and Grill, a popular stop among locals.
The luck of the draw can happen anywhere, but it is a welcome enjoyment when it hits really close.
At first, the store owner, Fred Cotreau, didn't believe the stroke of luck.
My cell phone went off. It was an Augusta, Maine phone number. He identified himself as a lottery agent. I thought it was a scam. He said, within a few minutes, it's going to go live on the media. I suggest you get down to the store.
Karen Downs and Ronnie DeVoe both say they worked the registers Friday the 13th, when one of them printed out the lucky numbers, which happened to be Maine's first ever Mega Millions jackpot.
Either me or her had it in our hands.
We just can't believe we did it here.
With no winner for 3 months, the jackpot grew to become the second largest payout in the history of Mega Millions. The highest, a little more than $1.5 billion, won in South Carolina in 2018. The largest lottery prize ever climbed to $2 billion, and the winning ticket was sold last November at Joe's Service Center in Southern California. But it's still a mystery if anyone claimed their fortune. Back in Lebanon, Maine, residents are eager to see who comes forward and hopeful it's one of their own.
For the first time in a long time, Lebanon's actually on the news, and it's something positive, something good. This is exactly what this area needed.
I wasn't the winner.
Same here.
Have a good one, everyone.